I've been a pilot for 43 years, just retired. The last 16 and a half, 17 of which I spent in Africa, in the East Coast at first, based in Kenya, moving all over Central and Northern Africa, and then the last 6 or 7 in West Africa, based in Ghana. I started to fly in the Caribbean in Barbados in 1979 with Aero Services right here at the airport, which is a small charter company. After 5 years there, I went to LIAT in the subsidiary based in St. Lucia and Grenada, and also Antigua. After I had the opportunity in the mid-80s to go to carry cargo, which I did the training and the exams and so on in Florida to join them. But after that, they only lasted 2 months after they went out of business, 2 months after I managed to complete all the training. And I ended up, after that, going up to Turks and Caicos, where I spent a couple years in Turks and Caicos before returning to the region. Had the opportunity in Grenada to start a tour company, which I owned with someone else. And I flew there as well for a small charter company, well, for the LIAT subsidiary. Then Helen Air, I helped Helen Air set up their base in Grenada, because they were a St. Lucia-based organization. I helped them set up in Grenada. And I also owned a tour company which did day tours, and we actually went as far as being the general sales agent in the Caribbean for Caledonian Airways. And that lasted for about 9 years until I came back to Barbados, and I worked for Trans Island Air. This is now, we're up in the latter 90s, right? Spent a few years there, and obviously the opportunity to fly something bigger came about, and I joined Caribbean Star. I joined them as a captain, and I worked there for a few years until they went out of business. And that was until 2006, right? And with Caribbean Star out of business and not many opportunities existing within the region, at least reasonable opportunities. I mean, I could have probably gone into LIAT, but it meant starting back at the bottom with their kind of seniority system. The opportunity came up to go to Africa, a company in Africa that acquired Dash 8s, and they wanted captains with some experience to operate their airplanes, which were UN contracted airplanes. So I took that opportunity up and went to Kenya, did the licensing transition requirements and whatnot. And my first stint was in Khartoum in North Sudan. And we flew UN personnel into the Darfur region. There was still conflict going on there. We flew into Darfur daily, 6-7 hours around and about in Darfur, back and forth. Mainly humanitarian UN personnel at the time. Of course, the company had many contracts, so you spend, my rotation was 3 months on, 1 month off, so that month off I'll be back home in Barbados. And after my first 2 stints, then we move around, of course, so I moved, my next stint was in Chad. Then same thing again, a couple months there, go home, you come back. And over the period of 10 years, I ended up doing stints in North Sudan, which is now North Sudan. It was all Sudan at the time, but North Sudan and South Sudan, Congo, DRC, Chad, Mali, Ethiopia, Congo, Somalia, and it went on like that, rotations. It was quite enjoyable, sometimes dangerous, because we did only do humanitarian in some places. We did United Nations troops in Somalia, in Chad, and in Mali. And these were all dangerous spots, hot spots for what was becoming the growing terrorism threat at the time. We were in Western Darfur, in a place called Janina. And the guys on the ground told us that one of the UN helicopters had crashed, right? So we decided we'll take off at just about 20 kilometers up, just 5-6 minutes flying. So we took off and we went low level, and we were looking at the crash site from the air, right? So we're flying around low level, circling, looking at the crash site. And it was, just like curiosity, because we can't do anything from an airplane. But so we had a look, maybe 15 minutes, and then we set course and went back to Khartoum. And on landing Khartoum, we told the guys on the ground, you know, the UN guys, hey man, we saw the crash site and it's bad, you know, sad that the helicopter crashed and so on. And the guy said, you went flying around there? And we said, yeah, we had a look at it because they told us that it crashed with a technical issue. It is at that point that we learned that the helicopter was actually shot down by rebels in the hills. And the mere fact that they did not have a lot of surface-to-air artillery is the only reason that they probably didn't take a shot at us as well, right? So that was a little scary, you know. The concept over years has always been that Africa is very far, because primarily to travel from states in Africa to the Caribbean, you have to go through North America or UK or somewhere in Europe to get here. And it's a deterrent because it's a total of 8 hours and 8 hours, 16 hours flying, let alone layover time. So you're spending 28, 30 hours on a trip from Africa to the Caribbean. And that was a deterrent. And it was probably kept that way because the powers that be had the super airlines to dominate and control our region and not allow us to foster links with Africa. The initiative of recent to bring air connections between Africa and the Caribbean is a blessing to me. You know, in 16 years in Africa, traveling 3 times a year back home, it means that I did 48 of those 30-hour trips in order to get home for my leave. And also the realization that goods, particularly perishables, which can only travel from Africa by air, are so much cheaper. With the cost of living in our countries in the Caribbean, it is a great incentive for us to be able to purchase good quality perishables at a reasonable price. And it would do something for our cost of living, etc. Africa is a lot more developed than you assume it would be, for starters, right? Standard of living in the middle class sector is very, very high. Right? The upper class is unreal, the kind of money they have. And it's so vast that the experiences that you can gain from territory to territory, from country to country, is just a life experience. I cannot replace going on a safari and seeing all these big animals and going to all the different cultures that you're exposed to and all the different the significance of so many different countries. They're all Africa. They're all slightly different. The experience is vast. It's almost difficult to explain what the experience is like. I love it there. I would stay there, but like anywhere else, there's nowhere like home. I don't get to get this very easily in Africa, right? Because some countries are landlocked, and some the beaches may be so far away, right? But I do not see a vast difference between living in Africa and living in the Caribbean. I really don't, right? Except that Africa is a lot more affordable. Because when I first went to Africa, and I say Barbados, I had to explain where Barbados was, right? And when I finished explaining, they still think it's part of Jamaica, right? And I lived with that because some people, yes, some you can explain to, some it ain't gonna work, right? So I went along with that, right? I always made it clear that we were not America, that we were not part of the Americas or Central America, right? Or whatever. But that is the beginning. That's 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10. In recent times, in the last 5 years, 6 years, we have had visits by delegations from this Barbados government into Ghana, for example. The Prime Minister was well received. Her knowledge, her fluency, and her speeches were so well received that she became a hit, right? So now we got 2 big names from Barbados in Africa. We have Prime Minister Motley, and we have Rihanna. So it's easier now. I can know, if I say I'm from Barbados, I can say, you know Motley, right? Or you know Rihanna, and we're good to go, right? And the impact that she has made on African leaders, I guess because she's just fluent. She's just super intelligent. She is, you know, probably the best orator in politics in the Caribbean right now, right? And that has gone over very well. And she's had 2 major visits, and they've had like 4 delegations who have done visits, and they have all been well received. They've all been well received. Because we are now seen for what we are. A small island with a bunch of very intelligent people, good leadership, right? Good social policies, and moving ahead and looking to foster links with them. And they are willing to learn things from us, right? Although as big as they are, there's not a proper national insurance scheme, for example, in most African countries, right? There's not there's not a lot of things that we have social things. For example, in most African countries, you have to pay to go to school. From this high right up, you have to pay. And if you can't pay, you may not go to school, right? You know the situation here. I don't have to explain it. We're different. So there's a lot of social policies within the Caribbean that all leaders like Prime Minister Motley and so on can impress upon them and make them better. And their vastness can create trade and links with us that can help us save our cost of living from going sky high. And so I'm thankful that Prime Minister Motley has with her brilliance, has come there with her teams and has had an impact on the leaders and the citizens at large. She addressed a stadium on the West Coast, near to where the Cape Coast, near to where the slave thing went on. And that 20 or 30,000 people there, right? And the lady was well received, you know. And when I say Barbados, and they say, oh, that lady, she's the Prime Minister. I say, yes. And so it's a pleasure, and I applaud the efforts being made. And that is why I'd love to be, part and parcel of helping them go forward in the area which I am familiar with.